of not using the real PowerPoint. So officers, regular GSC Zoom meetings, 4 p.m. Friday, talk to Rodney or Roshan. And on OrgSync, we have a little profile for our organization. Oh, it's called on Engage. So please join. You can go to Engage and look, or you can use this handy link or QR code. We also have a Facebook profile. I don't know anything about that, but the Facebook people would like to see you there. Next week, we are going to have Carolyn Supersand from UT Austin. And following that, we have somebody coming in from Amtrak to talk to us about analytics. Today, we are having Dr. Andrew Hjortland from Johnson Controls to talk to us about lessons from industry and to answer our questions and to help us learn more from the discussion. Thank you for coming.
All right, so to get started, Dr. Hjortland, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Andy Hjortland. I grew up in Wisconsin, actually, and I went to the Milwaukee School of Engineering for my undergraduate degree in mechanical engineering. And while I was there, I was an intern actually at Johnson Controls at their headquarters in Milwaukee. And that was an intern for about 2 years in a group that was kind of a research group. It's kind of a mix of business development and research for advanced building controls. And towards graduation, probably about a year before graduation, actually, I was thinking about, well, do I want to continue working on this type of thing? And I thought I did. And I realized that all of my managers and all the people I worked with had master's degrees or even PhDs. And so I decided to go to grad school at Purdue University. And there I was intending to just get a master's degree. But after 2 years, I completed that and decided I liked it enough to stick around for a few more years. And I ended up getting a PhD where I worked on kind of things related to HVAC equipment, control, and maintenance decision-making. So I got a PhD at Purdue and again was kind of trying to decide what career path I should follow, I guess, next. And as a PhD, you're kind of either expected to kind of go into academia, become a professor or a postdoc, or the other career path that's pretty common is, at least in the field that I'm in, is join a national lab or go into industry. And I decided to do that third track where I joined a company called Kaiser Warren, which makes supermarket refrigeration equipment for large US retailers, Target, well, not Walmart primarily, and then other local supermarkets. And I was liking that job. It was a mix of controls development and modeling thermal systems, dynamic modeling of thermal systems. And about 18 months into my job, the mother company of Kaiser Warren decided to sell the company. And so that was kind of an unexpected turn that is kind of, I guess, part of industry. And I didn't really like the outlook for my career path with the new company. So I decided to join Johnson Controls in Norman. And that's how I got here for the last about 18 months. So in my short time, it's kind of unexpected turns here and there, but I feel that my graduate degree has kind of given me opportunities to jump around without much difficulty when needed. And now I work on controls mostly for air conditioning systems for commercial buildings and residential buildings, and diagnostics. So determining if the air conditioner is working properly or not using software and controls. And so that's where I am now. Is there any questions that many of you guys are interested in? Like how many people are actually, I guess, can we do this? How many people are interested in joining industry? If you could use the reaction button and do a thumbs up if you're interested in joining industry.
Ways, don't know.
Sure. Well, yeah, I mean, do the other symbols. I guess what I'll first start with is some of the things that I found to be the most important parts of industry. Your network, everybody says that you have to have a network to get jobs and to move up in industry, and they're right. It's amazing to me after sitting on a couple of interview panels and then getting jobs myself, how important that your network is. The percentage of jobs that people get where they just cold call a company or kind of just cold apply to a company, it's probably less than 20% of those jobs are filled that way. I mean, 80% of the jobs are word of mouth, people vouching for someone or recommending a job for somebody. And so I can't express to you guys enough that you should network any way possible if you're interested in going into industry. And from what I've heard, that also includes national labs or maybe to academia to some extent. But that's the biggest thing for me is build your network. The way I got my internship in undergraduate was a professor recommended me to the company. The way I got to Purdue, one of the helpful things was my manager was a Purdue grad from this lab that I joined, and he recommended me to join the lab. The way I got to the job at Kaiser Warren was one of the managers at Kaiser Warren funded some of my research at Purdue and liked what I did and offered me a job. And then my current job was a similar story where it's a person from my background at Purdue that offered the job. And so, I mean, I can't express enough that the network is the most important part of getting a job if you're interested in one. And how do you do that? How do you build a network? Well, the big thing for my field, air conditioning and refrigeration, is there's a ASHRAE organization. That's just the American Society for Refrigeration, Heating, and Air Conditioning Engineers that meets at least twice a year, and they have local chapter meetings once a month, mostly. And I mean, as a student, I think you can get a membership for free or nearly free. And you should definitely do that and start going to meetings and meeting people, and good things happen from there. People generally like to help out other people. And so if they know you, they will try to help you if you give a good impression. So that would be my advice. So find what you're interested in. So if you're interested in automotive, there's SAE, of course. So join the SAE chapter. If you're interested in I'm not familiar with like biomedical organizations, but I'm sure there are trade organizations for engineers in every different field that I would just recommend getting involved with. IEEE is a big one.
Yeah, the ASHRAE for students is $25 a year. You get
Yeah,
all their publications and access. Well, I think if you want to go to the conference, it's an extra $25, unless you're
yeah,
presenting.
yeah.
Quite a lot of professional organizations again exist, and quite a lot of them have very reasonable student rates.
Yes, I mean, take advantage of the student rates while you have it, because it goes up. I've this year I had to, I'm a full member rate now, so it's a little more expensive. But that's one of the nice things about industry is they're paying for my membership. So I don't think that would happen in other like other career track paths.
Well, part of what they're paying you for in industry, I understand, is you're focused on a fairly narrow set of problems, and the tribal engineering knowledge in that you're looking at is fairly narrow. And
Yeah, and I'm actually on a lot of the technical committees in ASHRAE that kind of guides code development, so building code development, equipment rating standards, research projects sponsored by ASHRAE, all goes through technical committees. And so I'm representing the company in that regard for that type of thing.
so to some extent, it's like for industry what journal access is for a university, academia, maybe.
I'm sorry, you're a little quiet. I couldn't quite.
Oh yeah, I always have that problem. So it might be that for industry, some of these professional organization access is like access to scientific journals or an academic who would, the university pays for a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. But I would say that at least in my industry, like scientific journal articles aren't typically used very often. But
Well, yeah,
I think it should be used more, but they're just so expensive that nobody wants to pay for them once
yeah.
you're out of.
But then they're expensive, and there's so many of them that it might not be particular to an engineering problem.
And there's so
And
many
also,
papers published that most of them are not even very good, in my opinion.
maybe that's a sorting problem. But also the newest, most bleeding edge, most difficult to do techniques are not very safe to do in actual industry practice. As an engineer. Anyway, I'm getting quite boring.
Yeah, so somebody, Robert Rucker, yeah, you're interested in national labs, private research. And so, that's definitely a career path too. But the thing that I'll note is a lot of those positions, if you're leaving with a PhD, they're going to be a postdoc to join a national lab or I don't know about the private research route, but I'm assuming there's a lot of postdocs, and those are temporary positions. They have a contract for a certain number of years, but after that certain number of year, they will either offer you a full-time position or they'll tell you to scram. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that, and that's not much different than industry, but it's just you could be. I've found that joining industry, I have felt more stable, even though the company could end up selling anytime. But I felt it's a more stable career path, in my opinion, at least at first. than I think the postdoc route. And I mean, the postdoc route is, as well as, it's just kind of an extension of your graduate work, where, I mean, a lot of times you're expected to pull the same hours as when you were a grad student. Whereas I've found that since joining industry, there's definitely a lot more work-life boundaries, where everybody that I work with doesn't expect me to be on after 5 p.m. or whatever. I mean, you don't have to be constantly thinking about work. There is some off time to do either family stuff if you have a family, or just whatever else you do if you don't have a family. But, so that's one of the perks, I think, for me, is where you've got kind of a stable life and you're not expected to work constantly or at all hours or work a weekend or something. Now there are times where they depend on you to get a job done, and if you've got to pull some extra hours, that's on you, but it's pretty uncommon, at least in my experience. The other thing I'd note is in industry, I think, as far as like graduate work goes, I don't really think people care what you did as a grad student that much. Like they care if you did good work, but really they're hiring like a PhD student in the industry because they're a problem solver. Like they know how to look at a problem, define it, determine how to attack the problem, use fundamentals to solve the problem, and have some time management that you gain as a graduate student. And I it's not that they don't care about what you did as a grad student. You're not probably going to use it in industry. It's probably a niche like thing that it's a very specific problem with a very specific type of solution that you were working on. Whereas in industry, they're kind of just broader problems where there is no well-defined problem. You're defining it yourself as a kind of a research engineer at a company or something, and you're expected to determine what that problem is and solve it. And how you do it they don't really care about. It's just being able to define the problem and know how to attack it is a little different. So, I mean, you should do good work as a grad student. That's going to help you, but it's not going to necessarily help you get the job. At least like your specific thing is not going to land you the job. Whereas like definitely in a national lab, they really care about your specific topic area, and they want to bring you in because you're an expert in that field. Whereas in industry, they're more interested in like generalists. Like you're probably not going to get that exact problem again in industry. Can you kind of adapt to different types of things? Hey, Falani, what do you?
Hi, Andrew. So I have a question regarding, so once you graduate and enter industry, do you think that there are any skills that would be beneficial in industry that maybe like the school curriculum is lagging behind
Yeah, I don't know exactly the OU curriculum, but in general, I think knowing your fundamentals is the most important thing. Like for me, doing thermal system modeling, you got to know your thermodynamics. Like first law, you have to know that like the back of your hand, I guess. Second law as well, know what's impossible and what is possible. Fluid dynamics is important. So know how to do a pressure drop calculation, right? So just the fundamentals are the most important thing. Now, things that may not be taught quite as well is software. You're probably not going to be doing hand calculations. You're going to be using like software tools. And so being able to learn how to apply those tools correctly and no garbage in, garbage out. It's like you kind of still like, just because you're using a tool, you kind of have to have a sanity check every time you run that tool, just to make sure that what you're putting into it makes sense and what's coming out makes sense. And so that like, that's something that's not really taught. I don't think it's kind of like you have to, it's applying what you're taught to something that is doing what you're taught for you, I guess. Like you have to just make sure that what the tool is doing makes sense. Using your first principles. And then just like software development, for like me as a research engineer, like we run simulations because it's too expensive to run lab tests all the time. And so, and it's just not practical to run tests for every different condition and whatnot. And so like being able to write some software is a huge requirement these days. And so like in my field, C# is a predominant, that's the predominant software tool for heat exchanger modeling, thermal system modeling, all of the third-party packages are written in C# pretty much. And so that's one language that really no mechanical engineering program in the country uses to teach their students, but it's somehow become a de facto standard in my industry, at least, with all its quirks and whatnot. But MATLAB, if you're a controls engineer, MATLAB is still the predominant software that you should know. Dymola or Modelica is becoming more widely used. And so that's just a dynamic simulation software. It's open source in some, but the solvers are kind of closed source. So it is what it is. And then, I mean, like there's a big push for data analytics too. Like being able to understand what big data is doing or what machine learning does, like being able to kind of like conceptualize what is happening is important. But as far as being a practitioner, it hasn't been that useful for me. I still think in my area, at least, first principles modeling is still the key. We haven't really gotten very far into machine learning algorithms to solve all our problems anytime soon. Does that help answer your question, or do you have any more specific type of question?
Yeah, I think that helps, and I guess it makes sense to you definitely need to know the fundamentals. As far as being like a recent like when you're a recent graduate and maybe in your early career, do you find that companies are willing to help you learn those skills that maybe you haven't?
Yeah. I mean, they're not going to expect you to know C#, and they're not going to expect you to write the entire library right away. And like when they hire you, they don't just want to fire you like 6 months later. Like they're making a commitment to you, and they're going to help you succeed. At least a good company will do that. And so I wouldn't be too afraid of. I'm like imposter syndrome is not worth worrying about, because you're gonna, if it's a good company, you'll pick up on what you need to do in a efficient manner. And if it's a bad company, you probably don't want to work there anyways. So like if they're demanding something that you clearly told them that you didn't know in the interview process, or I wouldn't waste my time.
Yeah, thanks.
And I mean, like, companies by and large don't fire people. I mean, it's not that hard of a world. I mean, it's pretty uncommon. I mean, layoffs are definitely something that happens, but they don't really fire people for poor work that often. Like, you'd have to be pretty bad at your job to do that. Now, that if you're bad at your job, you're not going to get promotions, but to fire them, it's pretty uncommon.
Mhm.
And they want you to succeed. Like, they invest a lot of money in you to hire you, and a lot of times, like, there's a signing bonus or a moving package if you're relocating. That's pretty common in industry. Both moves of mine across the country have been paid for by the company. So I mean, they're investing in you and they want you to succeed, so they're going to help you.
So don't worry about how fast we're picking up stuff.
Well, I mean, you don't want to delay it because you're not working hard.
Yeah.
But don't be worried that you're not picking it up fast enough if you're putting the work in. I mean, just use your best judgment, I guess. I mean, at least, I mean, my managers haven't ever, I mean, it hasn't been a concern for me.
You have a question, Raj Mohan?
Yeah, Andrew, you discussed about you are working on first principle calculations in your industry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can you elaborate something more about specifically, like what kind of calculation you saw using first principle calculations in Johnson rules? Because I'm using first principle calculations for thermal and electronic transport. So
Okay.
what first principle calculations do you do in Johnson Control?
Okay, so
Hello.
yep,
Hello.
hi.
I think he heard you, Raj Mohan.
Okay. Yeah.
So one example, so we're an air conditioning manufacturer, and one of the most important parts of the air conditioner is the heat exchanger coil in it. And it's typically either a finned tube, so it's a serpentine tube that kind of goes back and forth with fins of different shapes and sizes. And there's two paths you could do to model that. You could build every single possible combination of heat exchanger, different tube sizes, fin spacing, fin designs. You could build them all, put them in a test cell and test them and build some empirical correlation. And that would be very time consuming and not really time efficient. Or you could model them. And so we've got a heat exchanger model that we built, which breaks up the heat exchanger process on the refrigerant side and the air side. And it discretizes the tube into a certain number of tube segments. It does a mass balance entering and leaving the tube. It does an energy balance entering and leaving the tube, and a momentum balance. And it's using refrigerant correlations. Sometimes they're from papers. So we have just your typical single phase fluid pressure drop correlations that we use. We're applying. When we get into the two-phase mixture region, we've got our other correlations for void fraction, heat transfer. Some of those are in-house that we've developed ourselves, and some of them are from papers. And so that's an example of a first principle process of modeling the heat exchanger. And so then once we have these models, we can start playing around with the design of the heat exchanger. And we have some sort of design requirement. So like we want this heat exchanger to give us this much heat transfer under these conditions. How do we design that? And so then our model works in the background for the different design alternatives that we propose. And it finds the solution for us, and we check it. And we also will then run some lab tests to verify the model. And if we need to, we'll add some correction factors to account for effects that we didn't model correctly or didn't model at all or whatnot. So that's an example of kind of like a first principles approach where you're just working from pure heat transfer, fluid mechanics, and not so much, we don't really care much about the structural properties of the heat exchanger. But eventually we do care about that, but not for the heat transfer design.
Thank you.
No.
So Andy, do you see any big difference between the research you did in your PhD master degrees and what you do here in Johnson Controls, or what you did in Kaiser Warren?
Yeah, the most important thing is cost. So the business I work for is in the business of making money. And so just because it's going to be the most efficient system doesn't mean it's going to be the system that we sell or make. I mean, there's an optimization problem going on where you have like your design requirements that you're meeting. Those are the constraints. But the optimization problem is usually cost. And so how do we get this design constraint in the least amount of cost? And that's the game we play. Whereas like the research we were doing at Purdue, that's a much lesser extent, where you're kind of looking at, here's the optimal, I guess like our research in the past, it's kind of done like, here's the optimal control performance we can do. And then we start simplifying models or simplifying the control algorithm. And here's how close we can get to the optimal solution. But we would never go to the optimal solution because it's too expensive or it's just too hard to model. And so we kind of work from the opposite direction. Like here's what we're spending on our control system now. Here's what we want it to do. How do we get there with spending the least amount of money? It's kind of like a reversed process. And there's certainly, I mean, we certainly make more efficient systems and we make less efficient systems, but it's at the end of the day, it's whatever the market wants is what we're going to focus most on. So if we do sell mostly the minimum efficiency required by the government. That's our most popular air conditioner that we sell. So most of the engineering resources goes into reducing that cost, and it's less on the highest efficiency system that we hardly sell any of, even though we have it in our portfolio. We don't generally devote much resource to those systems because we just don't sell a lot of them. So that's kind of like the downside of working in industry is like you can build something cool and high tech and really efficient that's going to reduce energy consumption, but the market ultimately prevails. Like if nobody wants it, nobody's going to buy it, and why work on it at all? What you should be doing is, how can I reduce the cost of that system? Not try to make it more efficient. I mean, that's the problem that we try to solve. But then again, the government comes around every 3 years or whatever and increases the minimum efficiency target. And so then we've got to go to the drawing board and how do we meet this new requirement? Because everybody's going to have to buy that thing.
Great. Yeah, that's good information. So the other question is, how do the companies evaluate your performance? Do you have like an annual performance evaluation, and what are they looking at?
So at both companies I've worked at, each year before the fiscal year begins, your manager works with you to come up with about 5 different performance goals that during the next fiscal year you're going to work on. And at the end of the year, you are then evaluated on, did you meet your goal or not? And so, like, I mean, one of the examples, I've been working on the fan in your air conditioner, the way it's controlled. I've been working on a new modeling method and control algorithm for that fan this year. And that was one of my goals from before the year started. And our fiscal year ends in October. So my manager will actually start talking with me this year in the next month or two about how I did on that project, and did I meet expectations, exceed, or not meet them, and so that's kind of the basis of how they review your performance and how they allocate merit raises and so on. And so, I mean, if you're consistently not meeting those goals that you agreed to work on, so that's the other thing. It's not that they're assigned to you. Like, there's a back and forth between your manager and yourself that are like, do you think this is possible? And you both agree that these are the goals. Here's the yardstick that we're going to measure my performance by. And so it's kind of supposed to be kind of a fair way of evaluating. And so that's how they do it. And I think that's pretty common at all the companies. Like, they all have the same, like McKinsey works for all the different multinational companies and big companies. So, I mean, it's all the same methods. All the MBAs went to the same school and learned the same things, and that's who decides the stuff. So they all do.
Yes. So regarding to this, like a research projects, right? So do you propose your own research projects in these companies, or are they going to assign you some specific things? And the another related question is there any mechanism in companies that encourage innovation among the employees?
Oh yeah. So how do they decide? It basically, it's a top-down system. So the CEO of the company goes to each business unit and says, here's what I want you guys to focus on. And then the manager of each of those business units then goes to their sub-managers or directors and says, here's what we need to do. And so it comes down from the top. And so my manager said that here are the things that we have to work on. And we determined, all right, so this is what they want us to work on. Here's the package that we'll produce. And so it's kind of, we're working together to produce this project. And sometimes, I mean, stuff just doesn't get done, and there may be some reasons, but if there were some like roadblocks, like a pandemic, like they're going to be understanding of it. But it comes from the top down usually, and your manager works with you to describe what the package you're going to produce this next year is going to be and how it relates to the goals cascaded down. And the other thing that I'd note is there's usually, like, there's performance goals. That's like 80% of the goals, but then there's also personal development goals are pretty common. And so, like, one of my personal development goals was, I told my manager that I'd be interested in getting more involved in ASHRAE. And so the goal was, all right, so join a technical committee and start providing some work with the technical committee. And so that's one of my performance goals, was getting more involved in ASHRAE, and then describing how would I do that. And so I'm working on kind of a research idea for ASHRAE, an ASHRAE TC committee that we're going to help propose. And so that's part of my performance development. And your second part of the question was, what was?
The mechanism to encourage innovations.
Oh, yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, at Johnson Controls, there's a patent incentive. So if you work on a patent that gets approved by the office, they'll give you a bonus. So there's that sort of incentive. There's the bonus structure. But then at Johnson Controls, and there wasn't this at my previous company, there's a tech challenge every year. And so the tech challenge is, it's supposed to be, if you've been working on something in your free time that you think the business could value or could use, you can present it at the tech challenge. And it's just kind of like it's kind of like showing, or like a science fair for like a business. And so you have all these new ideas everybody's got, and then they get judged, and some of them actually turn into products. Like there was a thermostat that Johnson Controls made that came out of this tech challenge. And there's a few different ideas that started in this tech challenge, which are basically like, they're supposed to be they're just like, if an employee has a good idea, it gives them an outlet to get it to the top of this, like the CEO attends the tech challenge. And so it's just an opportunity for these, like anybody that's got an idea can pitch something to the CEO. And so there's that type of thing at Johnson Controls. I think it's in some other companies too, but it's definitely not at every company. So I'd say like the two big things are like the patent bonus. That's pretty common. And then just if the company has like a thing for idea generation.
I have a question.
Okay. No.
So, for people who have been working in the academia, do you think is there any advantages for them to like move into the industry area?
So I think you'll learn how to, your focus will change. Like I was talking about earlier, like in academia, you're not as focused on like the market. And so it's going to tweak your brain a little bit to work differently. And so that's not a bad thing. And so that's what I would say. Like oftentimes what I see in other academics is that they're kind of almost super focused on one idea, that they don't quite see some of the problems of actually applying the idea in practice. And for a lot of ideas like fundamental research, that shouldn't be a concern. But for a lot of the research, especially in like engineering, it's not fundamental research. It's more of an applied research. And it really they should have a kind of a better dial about like, is this practical? Like, does it actually is it a solution looking for a problem is kind of the thing you want to avoid. Like you want to build solutions for actual problems. You don't want to build a solution first and then look for the problem. And so that's something where if you then go into industry, it's going to tweak your brain to kind of make sure you're not thinking that way. But then, I mean, like 20 years ago, it was pretty common for professors to work in industry for a couple of years and then join academia. And that's becoming less and less common, I feel. Basically now it's, you get your PhD, go do a postdoc, and then become a professor. And if you join industry, some professors won't, some hiring committees won't value that much. And so it's it's kind of something to think about. If you want to go into academia, it could hurt you to join industry in some people's eyes. Now, whether or not that's right, I would argue it's not, but it's just the way some people think. And so,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I think Lynn has a question.
Yeah, so I have a question about the person who has been working in industries for years and wants to join in academia. And I know a lot of professors says there's no strength, there's no any benefit or advantage these kind of people have. But suppose I'm looking for a job and I have industry experience and I want to be a professor. I must say that I have some special strength because of my experience. Then what should I say from industry perspective and from the academia perspective?
Well, here's what I would say. Most of your undergraduates are not going to go into academia. And so having the perspective of industry is going to help your department produce good undergraduate degree holders. That would be how I would promote myself. Like I know what it takes to go in industry, and I know what most of your students are going to deal with, and how to get them prepared for that. But as far as what a hiring committee thinks about a candidate, I don't think there's much you can do to change a lot of their mindsets. You're going to find some departments that don't value it at all, and there's going to be some departments that value industry experience. So pick the ones that value industry experience.
Yeah, good. That's a nice choice. Thank you.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Sure.
So, what's your experience been like? I guess just like with the number of jobs for people with like graduate degrees in your field, because like I've been told by some people that like, don't get a PhD because then you're overqualified and you'll never find a job aside from academia.
I mean, I think it's it's not quite as bad in mechanical engineering. I'd say, like, I think there are some, I mean, I don't know about this year with the pandemic. It might be kind of a hiring winter for a while. But as far as like mechanical engineering goes, I don't feel, I think there's quite a few positions every year that quite a few candidates can go on to become professors if they want to. Now, my wife, she's a biochemist. She has a PhD in biochemistry, and like that field is just like super saturated with, like, it's impossible to get a professorship nearly. So like this, like the hard sciences, like there's way more graduates that come out that probably have no chance of getting a professor job. So like depends on the field, but I think the engineering, like if you want to be a professor, there's a legitimate shot that you have if you put the work and effort in. And also depends on your like your specialty. Like certain specialties will have more opportunity than other. But I think it's very possible in like mechanical engineering.
Well, I think I was more asking like, is there a merit to the argument that if you have a PhD, you're overqualified for most positions in industry?
My research group, so the group that I work in, there's 7 of us and all of us have PhDs. Like it's a requirement. As far as my manager is concerned, it's a requirement for the person to have a PhD.
Okay.
So like if you want to do like research type things in a multinational company, the PhD it's going to set you apart, and you're not going to be overqualified. If you want to go into like application engineering, that's more like you'll be probably overqualified for it. So you have to like choose the correct job. And so like there'll be more limited amount of jobs that you'll be qualified for as a PhD holder, but they're definitely out there and you won't be overqualified. But there'll be certain jobs where you'll be overqualified and they probably just won't hire you just because they know that you're overqualified for it. But there's plenty of positions.
Okay.
Like we're constantly trying to, we're always trying to hire somebody because it's hard to find people that are qualified to do the work, at least in our field. But
Thank you. So are there other questions? Everyone can feel free to unmute themselves and speak up or put it in the chat.
Well, I guess I have a comment regarding your question, Rodney. So I guess that highly depends on the field, right? So having a PhD or not, or how valuable a PhD is. So I can tell you, for example, for national labs, right? Because I saw someone asked about national labs. I worked at the national labs for almost 2 years. And for national labs, like for different research areas or different groups, they have different, kind of like a hiring demands, For example, in our field, if you are a fresh PhD, it's likely that you can get a full-time position in national labs as like a research engineer or research staff, right? And we have seen a lot of basically like fresh PhDs like getting like full-time positions in national labs. But I can tell you for other fields, for other research areas, one of my best friends, he is like a geoscientist, and he worked at Los Alamos National Lab, a postdoc for 7 years. And then earlier this year, he got promoted to like a full staff, research staff. So, but in our field, like you work at like national lab as a postdoc for like 1 year or 2 years, and then you can easily get like a full-time position. So that really depends, right? So I guess like still like having a PhD, that depends on the field. But in our field, like getting a PhD is very valuable. That can get you like positions that typically require a PhD, and the bachelor degree won't be enough, such as national labs or other research.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, my wife, we had some Purdue friends in her department, and like of those 6 that we know really well, 6 of them were postdocs, or one of them just became a lab manager for a university, but 5 of the 6 became postdocs because that's the only option there was for their degrees. So it definitely depends on your specialization. And that's one of the reasons why I didn't really pursue academia as hard, because I just didn't, like in a lot of universities, like they kind of expect you to have a postdoc now, and I just really don't understand the value of it personally. In my opinion, I just didn't see what I was going to gain from that experience that I could get at Purdue or where I did my graduate work. I just didn't make sense to me.
It seems to me postdoc might be useful if you're trying to get a broad set of narrow experiences. Like
I think it's the stepping stone to become a professor. Personally, I think that's the only utility of it. And if to speak frankly, like I honestly, like, what's the point of getting a PhD? It's to you're deemed that you can further the field. You've furthered the field and you've done something significant. So like what does the postdoc get you? I don't quite understand it. It just seems like it's cheap labor for national labs, and universities.
My thinking with planning was that, you know, electrical engineering is a very new topic for me, and I need that for radars. But there are some other topics that I may need, and you know, some national labs are some of the best places to go for people who know that stuff. Because it's obscure and not a lot of industrial applications.
I'm the wrong person to talk about postdocs with.
I'm saying it's always good to collect more opinions and
No, for sure. Like there's
People hear you really
there's certain work that just pretty much it's the de facto requirement, and it's just it is what it is. So.
Anyway, Linguo asked, what's the difference between doing a postdoc in industries and in institutions?
A postdoc in industry, I think, is pretty uncommon. They're common for like large research-oriented companies. Like they're pretty common in like pharmaceutical industry, like has a lot of industrial postdocs. And as far as my field goes, I'm not familiar with any industrial postdocs. And that's not to say that they don't exist, but I'm just not familiar with an industrial postdoc in my area of expertise. But I am familiar with like the institutional, like national lab postdoc or like other university postdoc. Those are pretty common. And what the difference between the two are, I couldn't comment. But like an industrial postdoc is common in some fields. I think it's just an excuse to pay somebody less, personally, an industrial postdoc, but that's my slanted opinion.
So when, first of all, thank you for like giving us your experience, your time, and your knowledge about working in industry with your PhD. So in case there's an applicant that the person has 2 years of postdoc experience, and another person who doesn't have, but have publications or other qualifications. So how you evaluate these 2 years postdoc? Does it have a kind of weight of like having, let's say, 5 publications, or if do you value publications more than that?
So every company does have a formula for calculating, like if this person got a master's degree, what is that? How does that correlate into years of experience? Or like if this person got a PhD, how many years of experience does that equal in our field? And so there's probably a calculation for, okay, this person was a postdoc. Here's how many years of experience this person, I guess, would have according to our metric. And if the 1% postdoc experience and the other one didn't, there's some correlation between years of experience in that time. But the other thing is, if you're a postdoc at a lab and you're looking to get a research position, you're probably going to be applying for jobs where the manager knows the work of that lab. Like if you've dedicated the amount of time to specialize in some field, you're probably going to work on that specialization in this new company. And they're probably pretty well aware of what that lab or postdoc is doing. And so they're going to evaluate you just not to say that the postdoc, like, they're probably just thinking they're just going to look at your body of work and the other person's body of work, and I think they're going to make their hiring decision based on that. And again, like the most important thing is the network. Like if you can get if you have some connection to the place, that's the most important thing. And that'll win out every time.
Okay.
So I don't know if I answered that question, but
yeah, so irrelevant. So this is my takeaway. So if you have a postdoc experience which is not relevant to the job that you are applying, or they don't know about what you are doing in that lab, actually for the first one, that it's not relevant, maybe it doesn't count too much.
oh, it'll count. But like, at least like if I was hiring a research engineer, like the body of work is important to some extent, but when I interview them, do I think this person can solve a problem, or like, do they have an organized train of thought? Like, would they be able to break down a problem and attack it in a organized way? That's really what you're getting hired for. It's not the specialization so much. Like if you wanted to leave that specialization and just join a new company or a new area of expertise, I think they're really concerned about, can you break down problems in a thoughtful way? And so I think it's, they're going to look at what you've done, and they're going to value it according to whatever their internal metric is. But at the end of the day, like they may not be interested. They're really just interested in, can this candidate solve the problems that we're working on? And that's it.
Thank you.
So, any other questions to add on? Again, just feel free to unmute yourself and speak up, or you can add it in the chat.
I have another question.
Great.
And do you publish the result of your research? You said that you are more patent-based. So if you are patent-based, I think you don't publish too much.
Depends. So I personally don't like writing papers. So I personally don't like to publish. But
But others do.
But in my company, they're like, some business units publish lots of papers. But I would say like the stuff that we really are interested in, we're probably not publishing. Like if you want to publish something that the business has deemed we don't have a competitive advantage from, they'll let you publish it usually.
There is no promotion for that.
Oh no, I don't think you'll get, at least not in the company I work.
There's
like,
a
they're not,
subset of businesses that do try and use that for publication. You know, if you're working for a company that makes a very sensitive sort of measurement instrument, and you have some very
for sure.
big
Yep.
expertise, then writing publications and white papers and all that tells anybody who's looking to make that measurement, oh, these people know what they're doing. These people who you've looked at for basic references on this type of measurement are who you want to consider when you are considering purchasing a big ticket instrument.
I agree. Yeah, what you're saying makes sense. And like we do controls algorithms, and so a lot of times we won't even patent those, because in order to get a patent, you have to tell people how you did it. And so then you're getting a patent on something that just became indefensible because you told everybody how to do it. And how are you going to prove that they're doing the same? Like, so a lot of the algorithms that we make, we won't even patent or publish because they're deemed a trade secret. And in my last company, there was a trade secret bonus where if I got a couple trade secret bonuses where they thought it was too sensitive to even patent because the competitive advantage would have been lost. But as far as instrumentation or like a sensor, I bet those guys publish lots because that's their way of proving that their sensors really work well and they're standing behind them. So it depends on what you do. Like
When it comes down to engineering is technical problem solving with an economic value. And you know the business that you're being attached to, you know a lot about what's economically valuable for them and what's not economically valuable for them. You know, maybe you.
But yeah, if you want to publish papers that the business doesn't feel they lose any advantage from, they'll probably let you. But yeah, but it depends. Some places won't let you publish at all.
So it's one of those personal knowledge things, you know, what's important, what drives you.
Yeah, and so if you're interested in doing that, I would just suggest, like, if you're interested in publishing papers, when you're looking at places you would like to work, see if they're publishing white papers or journal papers, and if they are, then chances are you can do that as well. And if they're not, doesn't mean that they're not willing. It's just maybe they don't have anybody interested in doing it. And so go into that interview, but that'd be a question to ask. Will I be able to publish stuff that I work on if I want? So it's just a question to ask.
I wonder, oh, sorry.
There you go.
Yeah, how did this pandemic impact your industry and your company, especially for the recruitment? And is there any plan for the reopen plan for the recruitment?
Yeah, so all salaried employees worldwide. So there's like 250,000 people that work for Johnson Controls worldwide. All salaried people are working from home. There was a hiring freeze in the spring. We did hire one person this summer, but it's a pretty. They're pulling back quite a bit on hiring and long-term expenses. But I mean, I think it'll turn around, but who knows with like the third wave picking up now, and they told us we're going to be home until next year. So it's hard to say. That's beyond my pay level, those decisions, but yeah, it seems like it's going to be, it's impacting the US businesses still. Yeah, it's unfortunate. But yeah.
Well, that was my question. So.
Yeah, I mean, I heard of, I mean, it's not just industry that's like pulling back. I mean, it's like even if you want to go into like become a professor, like a lot of those jobs are dwindling. DOE is funding a lot of research, but as far as like postdocs, I haven't looked at those lately. But as far as industry positions, like if you're a good candidate, we'll hire you, but we don't have a lot of positions open right now. So yeah. Hopefully it'll get better.
One day, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Hope.
Yeah.
Lots of uncertainty in the world. Sometimes there's a lot more uncertainty, sometimes there's less. And
sometimes we're uncertain about how uncertain we are.
Oh yeah, but there's only so much uncertainty that people cope with long term. And so if you try and sustain uncertainty over a long time, things you can't predict change, and people have to figure out a way to make the uncertainty go away. So the extreme peaks of uncertainty maybe have a limited time, but you can't forecast your life from the age of 5. So you have to think forward. There's a certain amount of uncertainty here. I'm going to build some robustness into my plans. And if you really live that preparation, you can handle a lot of the short-term stuff. But, it's easy to say, oh, be more robust in your planning, but it gets to be very hard to do. In anything where your psychological state of mind matters, that is really difficult to control and to teach people how to control.
I guess the other thing that I thought about, so Johnson Controls is a publicly traded company. And so there, it's kind of interesting that the stock price fluctuations, it seems like are immediately impactful in terms of employment here. Like if we're humming along good, things are going good internally here. But if the stock price starts taking a hit just because the market is going down, like they definitely want to make sure those shareholders are not impacted. And so like that's kind of an interesting thing you have to deal with while working in the industry for a publicly traded company. Whereas like if for a privately held company, that's less of a concern. You're still beholden to the shareholders, but it's not quite as volatile in my experience. So just another point.
So it looks like we're approaching our time limit. So I guess this would be like the last call for questions or closing comments from people. So again, feel free to unmute yourself.
So yeah, this is just my honest opinion about things. So if you find it to be wrong, don't come back and blame me.
I'd like to add a comment on postdocs. In the old days, in engineering, we did not need postdocs. And it is only a recent phenomenon that a postdoc has entered in the engineering field. And in my opinion, that has entered because professors in engineering stopped preparing students for careers, whether it be in industry or in academia. Professors were very focused on getting the work done, getting papers written, and said, all right, we have a hard worker. We're going to get something out of it. We're going to get something, papers out of it, and send the person out. Now, whether you go to industry or in academia, you need to know how to communicate. You need to know how to write proposals to get money, because in industry also you have to write proposals to make things happen. You have to be able to evaluate. You have to be able to mentor. So as you rise up in industry, you need to be able to do these things. And regrettably, in academia, in engineering, professors have stopped doing that. The major emphasis is on getting papers out. It's on quantity. I got this money, I solved this problem, and that's the end of it. I, for one, in our lab, we only bring in people who want to be professors. And I would hate for them to go after a postdoc. I don't think it's necessary for them. That does not mean it's not necessary for others, because in our laboratory, they write proposals, they mentor students, they learn how to give a class, put a class together, all these sorts of things. Now, those of you who are going to industry and still feel like you want to do a postdoc, going to a government lab is superb. Because when you get to a government laboratory, you will meet lots and lots and lots of people, industry, academia, people from all from different agencies, things along those lines. And you will also get a feel for what the country is looking for. So independently of whether you go to academia or industry, for folks, I would advise a postdoc in a government lab rather than a postdoc with a professor at a university, because regrettably there are very few advisors or postdocs who again invest in helping their postdoc to really grow and prepare them for industry or academia. The focus is very much on, in my opinion, on let's get this out, get that done, get the other thing out, and that's it. But a government lab is a different story. The mentorship you get out, the way it's set up, my experience has been it's superb, absolutely superb.
Yeah, and I think at least the DOE labs too, they're like in the last 10 years, they've been trying to become more of like a corporate entity. Like they're trying to shift the way they do things to be more like a industrial entity to some extent as well, I would say.
And international students, if you're looking to go into industry, if many of the government labs have no restriction on citizenship, so you can get these positions and then from there go to industry. So it's a very good route to industry, particularly if
I'm the only domestic person in my working group at Johnson Controls, so we will hire international students.
So that's my 2-penny bit.
My closing remark is that more perspectives are always more valuable. If people are saying different things that may be useful in some circumstances and not useful in others, and having a bunch of conflicting information is a great way to really stretch yourself to find better approximations of the truth. Robust planning, a single perspective that you are absolutely convinced is true and that there are no other possibilities is fragile.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me talk to you guys.
Thank you
good
for
luck
coming.
with good luck to everybody.
Great, and I think you gave us a lot of good information. Sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today, and especially for rescheduling from the spring.
Oh yeah, well, no problem.
Thank you so
Bye.
much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Farouk,
Yes,
can I talk to you for a second?
yes.
I sorry that I sent it like slides a little bit late. I'm working on them. I may fix something and change a little bit. So I'll get them to you the last version maybe in this in the evening to share with others. But this is kind of the the latest version. Maybe small changes I will make.
So Reza, I want you to have faith in yourself.
Okay.
What can go wrong? Nothing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, okay. So it's okay.
Part of a learning exercise. And what we want tomorrow is for people to come along and say, aha, Reza, fix this, fix that. This, I don't understand that stuff like that. So it's progress.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. Bye.
Rajkumar, nice to hear that your daughter is doing well. Cody, nice to have you join us.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Okay.
Bye. See you.